Hello, everyone. This is Bishop Trimelda McDaniels, known as Pastor T. And this is my Archdeacon, Sharalee Duplessis. And everybody usually calls her Lee. And we're here to do a kind of like a sermon series. And for October, we're doing it on the psychology of possession. So I'm T.
I'm Lee.
And we are Sisters on Cinema. So, what do we got today, Lee?
We have Halloween, and we're going to ask the question, what is evil?
This is really important because if you're going to talk about possession, and anyone who has seen my advertisements for my class, the E word, which is on exorcism, understands that what we think of as evil from Hollywood and myths and, what people understand as being right and wrong, sometimes is a lot different from reality. And so that's what we're going to be examining this whole month. So we're going to start out with a definition of evil. What's the boogeyman?
As a matter of fact, it was.
What is evil? So I'm going to turn this over to my learned colleague here and tell me a little bit of your background on how you understand psychology and things.
I have a bachelor's in criminal justice. I have a master's in psychology and the study of human behavior. I have trauma certifications, and I have been a victim's advocate for over 20 years and worked a lot of cases of different types.
Think Criminal Minds, okay?
Yes.
That's kind of the background that people often have when they do profiling. So, think of Matthew Goober and all of them guys running around on Criminal Minds. But anyway, go ahead.
So when we look at evil, we have to take out of that aspect the mental health, which is chemistry disorders or high trauma. Some behaviors and some choices are made under those, and we can't hold a person responsible for that. So evil is knowing what you're doing is wrong, understanding that it violates a moral code, choosing to violate that moral code, and enjoying it. So this is the person who pulls wings off flies because they can and they like it. This is a person who tortures animals with a stick pin and little cats or something and gets glee out of the animal's suffering. So you cannot be evil without conscious, willful choice. Evil is not an accident.
Which kind of goes along with the theology and the theological understanding of what is evil, because it always has to do with choice. As a person who's heard confessions for over 40 years, one of the things that I always tell people is, whenever you come in and you talk about what is a sin, what is, a fault or whatever, there's three things. Number one, it has to be something serious. So we're talking the Big Ten. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not commit adultery, things like that. Number two, you have to know that it's wrong. Just like Lee said,
Yes.
You cannot just kind of commit a sin by accident. That's not the way it works. And you must choose to do that. You have to know it. It has to be something serious, and it has to be free choice. Somebody puts a gun to your head and says, shoot that person. That's not a sin because you don't have a choice. If you don't know that murder is wrong, say you're a 7-year-old and you pick up a gun and you shoot somebody,
Yes.
That's not wrong because you don't know it's wrong. And it has to be something serious. It can't be something like, step on a crack, break your mother's back, you step on a crack, oh my gosh, I'm hurting my mother. It has to be those three elements, which goes along with the understanding of psychology. So now that we have a working definition of evil, let's bring up somebody a character in cinema that has been considered evil since 1978, and that would be Michael Myers in Halloween. Constantly, people throughout this movie are saying, he's evil, he's evil, he's the epitome of evil. From 1978, when Jamie Lee Curtis first got her start as the Scream Queen, and we notice when you watch the 1978 version, she screams a lot, okay? And now we're all the way to 2021, and she's still in this franchise. She doesn't scream as much anymore. She kind of is a lot harder and a lot meaner. But everybody throughout this whole franchise says, he's evil, he's evil, he's evil. So as we look at Michael Myers, the unstoppable killing machine, and oh yeah, for those of you who are under a rock all this time, Jason is the guy in the hockey mask, okay? And Michael Myers is in the dead president's mask. Some people say he's wearing a William Shatner mask. I mean, I don't know. But anyway, so let's differentiate between the two. We're not talking Jason. We're talking Michael Myers, okay? And that's the Halloween series. So let me ask you, Lee, what do you think? Do you think that Michael Myers is evil? I mean, he's always killing people. His body count sometimes can get up into the dozens and everything per movie. So he's going around, he's stabbing people, and, he's cutting people's heads off and electrocuting people and ripping people into shreds. So is he evil according to your definition and understanding as someone in psychology?
Violence doesn't necessarily mean you're evil. Killing someone doesn't mean that you're evil. It's not good. We can't say that you should. What makes evil is conscious choice. So when we look at Michael's first kill, which is his sister, we see rage. We see a pressure, a tension that he is seeing something he has been taught is wrong. And he's probably in a home that's extremely rigid, a lot of black and whites. You do this, you're bad. You do this, you're good. It is obvious from the first kill that Michael is a low function IQ. He doesn't have a lot of reasoning ability. We know this because as time goes on, when Michael is not killing, he has no affect, he has no speech, he does not interact, he's catatonic, which is what we call in the biz poverty of thought. In other words, there's no thinking going on when there's no acting. So we cannot say that Michael Myers made a conscious choice. He doesn't have the capacity to make a conscious choice. Is he violent? Yes. Because when Michael is put into what he sees as a moral situation of wrong, the pressure that he feels to make it right has to be that it's ended. And his solution to the problem, which shows no reasoning skill, is to just kill it. If it upsets him, offends him, if he feels pressure, if he feels tension, he kills it. And he isn't pretty particular either. He kills the person with whatever's handy, whatever he can get his hands on. Now, he does have some reasoning ability. He chooses to wear a mask. Some people say that has to do with his psychopathy. I think it has more to do with he is conscious of getting caught. So there is enough awareness to know that he can be caught. There is an idea that he might feel guilt or be told he's guilty. It's more likely a child's-like understanding. I will be in trouble. People say I'm bad, so he puts a mask on. He wears clothing to cover himself up from the blood. So there's conscious thought in, I don't want to get hurt. I don't want to be disapproved of. But it's a very childlike understanding of that. And so as we see the movie go along, what we see is a person who handles pressure by killing. And that does not show evil. You have to make a conscious choice. You have to know right from wrong. You can't just be afraid that someone's going to be mad at you or not like things on your clothes or hide because you don't want to be caught so you can continue to relieve the pressure and the tension inside you. So Michael Myers is not evil. Is he dangerous? Is he violent? Yes, he's extremely dangerous. He's extremely violent, and he's not going to be able to recover because he doesn't have the capacity to learn another behavior. And so, in my opinion, he's not evil.
Well, this goes along also with a theological understanding because for someone who's been trained in exorcism, and I was trained by a guy who used to teach priests how to do exorcism, and this guy was hilarious. He had a military background, and he was one of these guys that you could tell he was very, very much ex-military, because everything was like this with him, and so were his exorcisms. And one of the things that he told me is that he said, there are some people who are perfectly possessed, meaning that they're no longer struggling against being taken over. They've gone, full tilt in it. He said, you know how when you play poker, and he told me this because I had a grandfather who was a professional poker player, and that's what he did for a living. He was a gambler. And so he knew that. So he brought up to me one day, he always used to call me kid. He said, hey, kid, you know how when you go all in, you push everything forward and you're betting everything? I'm like, yeah. He said, when you lose and you get cleaned out? And I'm like, yeah. He said, that's what you're dealing with. You're dealing with somebody who's all cleaned out. Okay, there's not much left of the person. No. This doesn't happen involuntarily, by the way. It's something you choose to do. You just simply go all in with evil. And after that, there's nobody home. Jesus talks about this, that when an evil spirit leaves and the person gets swept out and clean, he comes back taking 7 more spirits worse than the one that was before. And then the reference is that the last day of the man is worse than the first. Well, in Michael Myers' situation, looking at it from a theological point of view, there's nobody home. Okay. No. And if you become a vessel for something that is evil, then you end up becoming somebody that is just inhabited by evil, yes, which is the way we would understand it as to why it is you can't kill Myers. Yeah. It's not so much that Michael himself is evil, but he's become a vessel for it because yes, ain't nobody home. Okay. And somebody, of course, Hollywood's going to exaggerate it and everything else, where they shoot him, they stab him, they electrocute him, they throw him off a balcony, and he just gets up and he's coming for you and all the rest of it. However, in history, there have been people who were so evil that they were vessels for evil, yes, and they were hard to kill. Example of that, Rasputin. If yes, you look at the history of how they tried to get rid of him, they shot him, they drowned him, they poisoned him, they strangled him. Yes. It took forever to kill that guy. Okay? Yes. And I'm sure that somebody would have a good explanation, adrenaline or something. But I remember when I read that thinking, wow, some people are too evil to die easily. And this has happened in different times in history and stuff. Coming back from the grave? No. But having that type of stamina of evil? Yes. And that's one of the things that you look for in severe cases of possession. Because what happens is that the person identifies so much with that type of energy that it's really hard to knock them off. So you would say that Michael is more like a force of nature, kind of like Josh, We think of the shark as being evil because it certainly is against our best interest, but it's a shark, okay? So it's going to do what a shark does. So Michael does what Michael does, okay? So if you're thinking about, do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do, that shark's not evil. It's just being a shark. And so Michael is a conduit for things that are evil, but he's not culpable himself because there's no one home. However, we do have a pretty good example of evil in cinema, and that would probably be, could it be Satan? Okay, because if you've ever, one of my favorite movies is Constantine.
Oh, yes.
And good. When you look at Lucifer, and you see him coming for John Constantine's soul, there is nothing subtle about him at all. He's just total, absolute malice. When he leans over and he tries to basically eat Constantine's soul, everybody just goes, ew, okay? Notice in the clip that Lucifer is wearing all white, okay? So he's very pristine. But despite the fact that he's wearing snow white, before he comes down, notice the corruption that is dripping from his body. So there's no way that you can look at Lucifer and go, oh, I'd like to be his friend. the automatic reactions back up. And that's the interesting thing about evil from a theological point of view. You know when you see it.
And he's not sorry. He's aware
No.
of what he's doing. He's taking pleasure in causing Constantine, harm. He's taking joy in plotting, because he can plot how he's going to ruin Constantine's soul and take him to hell.
Yes.
Telling him all the fun that he's planned, rides, carnival rides and things to do with his soul. So that is somebody who is conscious, willful, understands right from wrong, doesn't care, takes great joy in not doing the right thing.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that people need to understand in the psychology of possession. See, people seem to think that you're just walking down the street and all of a sudden a demon comes and gets you and then you're possessed. No. And
which is a great comfort to the mentally ill, who often think that their out of control behaviors are evil. And I can confidently tell them, if you did not willfully, deliberately choose to do something you know is wrong, you just have a mental illness.
Yeah, and while mental illnesses suck,
and it's scary,
it's not quite the same as something coming up from the ground and getting you and dragging you to hell. Things like this are not so dramatic. What's the term that gets used a lot? The banality of...
banality of evil.
Yeah, explain that to everybody. What's that mean?
Evil's banal. It's every day. It's kicking a puppy because it's in your way. It's pulling the wings off a fly because you can. It's taking a hat pin and poking somebody, watch them scream and cry, and then tell a gossip about them. Evil doesn't have to be violent or brilliant or scary. Evil is just choosing to make cruel, willful choices at the expenses of others for your own gratification. And you don't necessarily do it for ego. Your ego is so inflated and you think so highly of yourself. You're not petting your ego. Your ego is you. So you're just enjoying yourself.
And that's one of the things that I think that we have to look at when we come to evil. A lot of young people will say, well, what's good? What's evil? It's all subjective. What's good for me is not good for you. And, Toro poo-poo, let's put it that way. That's not true. We know evil when we see it, and that's what I think is interesting. When someone is totally caught up in the malicious use of force or deception or cruelty and everything else.
Ted Bundy.
Yeah, there you go. There was a person who he knew what he was doing.
He was beautiful. He was intelligent. He was charming. He was witty. He had everything going for him. He could make money. He was a lawyer. And what did Ted choose to do? Torture and kill women.
Yeah. And as the judge said when he sentenced him, he said, I wish I could have seen you on the other side of this, buddy, but you chose the wrong thing. Notice what the judge said. You chose the wrong thing.
Exactly.
So free agency is always important in understanding evil. You don't become evil by accident.
No.
You don't become evil because you're mentally ill. You don't become evil because, something just jumps in and takes you over. That's not the way it works. You have to know it's wrong.
Yes.
You have to have the ability to choose that it's wrong. And it has to be real wrong, not just somebody said, well, you should wear high collar dresses and you're not. So you're evil.
And
That's
don't
not
forget,
true.
You must be in control.
Yeah, you have.
Evil is
to
controlled. It's not out of control.
So as we come to the end of this first presentation, there's a couple of things that I want to say. Our next one is going to be on crazy or evil. What's the difference? And we're going to be looking at the Joker, which in popular cinema is somebody that people look at and say, well, he's crazy and everything else. But is the Joker crazy or is the Joker evil? And how did he get that way? I think the answer is going to surprise you because there's a take on the Joker that I very seldom have heard anybody talk about, but it explains where he came from, what's going on with him and everything else, and why the Joker is evil.
Yes.
So one of the things that we try to do at the end of these is give you a little bit of homework. So here's your homework, okay? Watch Halloween. It's easy to find on, Netflix or whatever. Just look for it and you'll find it. And it's either $4 to watch or you can, rent rent it, or whatever. And when you watch it with the idea of thinking of Michael as a social force, okay, running around and trying to enforce the whole idea of, sleeping around is wrong or whatever. It's not saying that Michael is not, doing bad things, but he's more of a force in nature, like that stupid shark in Jaws, than he is evil. Yes. You want to understand evil? Take a look at the evil in Constantine. That's malicious and cruel and using power for no other reason except to hurt somebody. And that's the big thing. And so as we go along in this series, we're going to be looking at cults. We're going to be looking at the whole pathway to possession. You don't get possessed just like that, okay? It's a process, just like evil is a process, just like good is a process. You don't come into this world being unselfish and kind and sweet and everything else.
You have to learn it.
You have to learn it. It's a learned behavior and it's learned choices. It's the same thing with evil. That's one of the reasons why I get so annoyed, and don't get me started, but one of the reasons I get so annoyed with the evil baby syndrome. You come in with 666 printed on your head and you're the son of Satan. Nah. No, that's not the way it works. It's not the way it works biblically, and it's not the way that it works in common sense and everything else. And you would probably agree with that this is a learned behavior. This is not just you just woke up one day, pardon me, and came out of your mama's womb and you're all, But anyway, so we thank you for joining us for this. And we look forward to talking to you next time. So I'm T.
I'm Lee.
And we are
Sisters on Cinema.